Alright, I'm headed out to my cabin to do some aluminum soffit and fascia. I've chosen black aluminum soffit and fascia, and I'm going to show you two examples. One on the gable end here at the front of the house, and one in the courtyard on the horizontal area where gutters are going to cover.
Construction Couch here. Today we're going to talk about aluminum soffit fascia. Now the aluminum soffit and fascia is what finishes the eave of a standard truss on a garage or home or shed. It's a really easy way to clean everything up, and it's got an added purpose if you're using a vented soffit, which is going to allow the air to vent through the soffit and clear that hot air out of your attic going out the roof vents. So we're going to take a real close look at the installation of all these different accessories. I'm going to also show you how to make a cutting table to cut your soffit with ease. Let's go over the components on their own so we understand where they go. So this is the vented soffit, aluminum, 16-inch panel. When I'm using it for eaves, I'm going to cut it down to 17.5 off these full 10-foot sheets. So it comes in 10-foot sheets if you're doing larger areas like underneath patio areas or etc. etc. So that's where I'm going to show you how to cut this. When you are attaching to the wall, you're using a J-trim. Now, a lot of guys will just screw this J-trim right to the OSB, or say they're hitting studs. I prefer to put a ledger, a 2x2 ledger, exactly level from underneath the fascia board, and that way when I'm attaching my J, I'm putting it firmly underneath this 2x2 so it can never push up or move. Now, I have been in some people's attics where they have pigeons. There is some pigeons that are smart enough to pick a weaker zone on the J-trim and fly into it until they push their way up through. So this is why I like to use something solid, like a 2x2. You're going to attach that to a chalk line or level line and screw it with your drill, some Robertson screws, or nail it on with a framing nailer. Once you've got your J installed, or your 2x2 installed, install your J, just staple it across the edge with the crown stapler, and you're ready to attach your cut soffit pieces into the J-trim and surface staple down in the grooves. Now, stay about 1 inch away because this is your finished fascia piece, or no more than 1 inch away from the edge, because you see the bottom part here is what has to cover that, and this is what slides on as your finished piece for covering your 2x6 fascia and covering the staples underneath, leaving you with that look. There is a couple scenarios you can run into with this fascia. If you're using it for a gable end, you don't have any gutters going on that. So you need what's called a gable trim. Now, in typical construction, the roofer won't use a roof edge on the gable edges, so you must push this up tight underneath the shingle, and that's what your piece will fit into for its finish and to lock it on. Now, if you're on a roof edge, you'll see that you just tuck it up underneath that, and you fire lots of staples into the face of the 2x6 fascia because they're going to get covered with gutter when you put your gutters and your downspouts on. This will all get covered up. So you want to firmly put it on there, make sure it's not going to come off. And when you're doing your gable edge, you want to do this and leave it more decorative. Finish with screws on your laps. Keep your screw pattern even, and this will lock it on from the wind taking it off. So now that we know about all the components, let's take a look at the installation. Alright, now that we know what the different materials are that we're using, let's talk about cutting them to length. So with your fascia, J-trim, and gable trims, you can just cut with a pair of tin snips. I like straight cutting. You can make nice little trims. You can cut these full 10 foots to length, and J trims, I like to just cut this way, cut in line, fold, square them up, and then just a little clip inside. Gable trims, to not bend them, I try to get my tin snip inside it, at the back side of it, then I'll come to the front of it and make the same cut. Trying not to bend it or squish it. With the Soffit material, vented or non, it gets a little trickier. If you're going to try to use these to cut rips down or cross cuts on the material, it's going to take you a long time and it might cut your hand. It can be done though. So a really nice, easy way, if you've got a lot of it to do, or say a garage amount, is to build yourself a table jig, and I'm going to show you mine. Here it is. This is my Soffit cutting table jig. Now I've made it on a piece of 3/4 inch plywood, put a couple of rails on it, used some other flashing so that the Soffit material will slide through there nicely, and I made a little cutting rail system that fits my circular saw perfect. Now if you're using a circular saw to cut Soffit material, you need to cut backwards through the material, otherwise the blade, when it comes up through it forward, will rip and tear the aluminum all apart. So it's really tricky to freehand cut backwards, and that's why I suggest making a jig just like this. So let's take a look at how it functions. Now picture in my work area, these are 10-foot sheets. I curve them in a little bit so they lock into the track. This is the exact measurement of the width. Got my circular saw. Now I've made a rail and another rail on this side to lock it in perfectly. I will set my depth just to touch the plywood, which means it's going to be cutting all the way through the vented soffit. Then I can just mark a line on here to know where to cut my sheet each time. And that way I can mass produce a lot of cuts in a short amount of time. So I'm on my line, then I would secure my material with my hand, hearing protection, eye protection on, and start up the saw, bring it backward through, holding the saw firmly, guiding it against this rail, and then push it back. Now hold the saw until the blade is completely stopped, because if it jumps out of here, it might come at you. So hold on to it, remove your piece, slide your new piece in, saw has stopped, line up on your line, hold down the material, pull another cut, put it in its resting spot, keep your hand on it till the blade stops, remove your piece, and keep going. So this is a really, really handy table jig.
Now I'm heading up on my scaffolding. Gonna get all my tools up there and get started with this gable end aluminum soffit and fascia. You can see behind me on the wall here that I've got my 2x2 already installed over top of my paper. Now that 2x2 is perfectly level with the 2x6 fascia board. My fascia board has got some black paper on it. That's just the roofer paper or the roofing paper kind of curled around the top. Don't worry about that. I've got to pull it down nice and tight, and my gable trim will go right on top of that. So here's the J. I'm going to use my 1/4 inch crown stapler to attach it to the underside of that 2x2. And right after that, you'll see me put the soffit pieces in attach the gable trim to the fascia and then slide my gable trim in and work my way up. If you're doing a horizontal application, I'm going to show a demo of that next. So for fasteners, I am using a 1/4 inch crown stapler. I literally use that stapler to get the J installed, to install the Vented Soffit, also to staple on the gable trim. And then when I slide my fascia pieces in, I use decorative screws or black pan head screws in even patterns across the fascia so that it looks good from the street. Now on the horizontal application, that's literally the only difference, is you don't use the gable trim and you fire a whole bunch of staples into the face of the fascia because it's going to be covered with gutter and downspouts anyways. So again, try to keep it really clean. No fasteners on the surface unless they're spaced evenly and looking good on a gable end. And horizontal, if you have gutters going on, you usually fire a bunch of staples across the horizontal face. Here I am at a horizontal area in the courtyard of the cabin. You just saw me use my framing square to make sure that my soffit panels were going in square to the building or square to the fascia. And here I am putting the finished fascia piece underneath the roof edge. And as I mentioned before, literally the only difference is you're going to see me fire a bunch of staples across the face of this rather than using my drill.
Tim Pierce, a Harley-driving, tattoo-loving construction expert who's on a mission to help you do it yourself. From plumbing to electrical, framing to painting, Tim's the guy you want around.
There is unforeseen things like this in everybody's home. It's crazy to even bother putting it in if you're gonna do it so crappy.
The construction coach is here to walk you through that home construction project, offering tips and tricks you won't find anywhere else.
This technique can be used all over the place.
Get step-by-step advice from the tools needed to easy-to-understand technique for getting that project done just right.
I think this gives it a really nice clean look underneath here.
Instant access to free video content streamed anytime to any device. Featuring nearly 200 videos, 50 hours of content, all sorted by category and task. Who says home construction is overwhelming? Not with Tim.